And where you have, work that could be quite mundane or quite repetitive, in that downtime, getting people to sit together and dine together is a
Yes.
beautiful thing, because a lot of our food cultures really, have been birthed out of that sharing moment. If it's not sharing your food, it's just sharing the experience of food together.
All right. Thanks, Tobias, for doing this. I'm really excited about this chat. Um, so the workplace food service aspect of food is something that you don't really think about a lot. Many of us don't think about a lot. If we have food at the workplace, it's a perk. If not, out of sight, out of mind. That's the kind of situation. So I'm really excited to chat with you about this. But before we get into it, could you just explain what you do?
Yeah, no, sure. Thank you. So I I've been working in corporate food service scale, international level for the last decade. My specialty around that is around the scaling, the synergies, the formation of such a usually a perk based program in the cases I've looked after. But really, my specialty is around the inclusive diet component of that, and serving like a workforce as opposed to high street customers. So yeah.
And so, when did food at the workplace go from being nice to have to kind of something more strategic?
Yeah, I mean, I think food at the workplace, I think really kicked off as just like from a convenience perspective, right? As long as people have been going out to work, they've had to break for their meal time, typically lunch, depending on their working hours, and often that is their downtime. That is a time where they can decompress. It takes them away from the work, but depending on the work settings, it had either taken people too far away from work, and can where work is not as I guess palatable. People spend a lot of time away from work, so I think a lot of workplaces came up with the strategies to say, hey, let's make things a bit more convenient. Let's try and have food and beverage and refreshments available in the workplace, to keep things flowing, keep people in the workplace, especially in the kind of modern day corporate food service. But I think where it became more than a perk, or it became a perk, is for companies to provide that and add an element of control, convenience, and increasing employee satisfaction in the workplace. I think it's still very much a perk. It's not common practice in every workplace to have food, especially food that are either heavily subsidized or free. So I think it became more of a perk for some sectors, out of the need for retention and competition, for an aspect of amenities and working culture, as there's been a focus on health and wellness and convenience. So yeah, many different reasons why I would say it's become more of a perk these days, but not in every sense of the word. It's still very much a perk in many establishments, and it's very much not non-existence in other industries and establishments as well.
Yeah, I've actually come across a few companies where, as you said, it's definitely a perk. Um, and in terms of, but particularly, I recently saw in a manufacturing unit right here, they offer two meals, like two full meals for their employees. And I thought it was fascinating because they actually spend time thinking about the menu so that there is a balanced diet that actually goes into what people are eating, whether it's for breakfast or for lunch or for, your Levinses or tea, evening tea. So it was quite, I was taken aback at the, um, I guess, elaborate. spread that they had. And it
I
was a
guess the thought
manufacturing
process.
unit. Sorry?
Yeah, I mean, no, I guess the full process that goes into it. I
Yeah.
mean, these days there's a lot more thought that goes into like corporate food service. And what I should mention also at the beginning, some of the motivators around this element of service is that boosted morale of
Hmm.
employees, that fostering communities. And where you have work that could be quite mundane or quite repetitive, in that downtime, getting people to sit together and dine together is a
Yes.
beautiful thing, because a lot of our food cultures really have been birthed out of that sharing moment. If it's not sharing your food, it's just sharing the experience of food together. So to get that from a workplace, in a space where the social aspect is not the priority, at least being able to foster that in the break time, in the moment, whilst people are doing the thing that all people have to do, eat. I think is it's a no-brainer. From a resource perspective, or even if a company can't provide food and drink, allowing for a space that employees can come together and just have a relax and just sit down and share a meal. Yeah.
Yeah, that sense of community, I guess. It's
Mhm.
another space for community building. And
Yeah, and let's take the example of manufacturing that you said.
yeah,
Like, um, I've observed similar, right, manufacturing hubs, warehouses, areas where, and sometimes where they're in remote spaces, and actually it's a bit
yes.
inconvenient to for everyone to have to bring their meals in or to find somewhere to buy lunch.
Yeah.
So yeah, many reasons to have food on site.
Yeah. Have you come across any unexpected insights from this role that really helped you shape your attitudes towards food?
Yeah, I mean, so many. I guess. I mean, it's a broad question, but I think when it comes to catering to the same audience day in day out, there's usually a different approach to, like, say, a high street restaurant where people are actively choosing to go to that space, or from footfall traffic, kind of catching an eye of some marketing and entering that space. You really become the diet of those people. They come to expect what's there, and keeping things creative and fun it becomes a necessity. But I think one of the key insights is how inclusive, how inclusion in your how you fold in inclusion into your menu choices, and how you choice engineer your range, and how you menu engineer your service, makes a real difference, makes an impact. Those that have restricted diets for various reasons, or are used to a certain food service style, or certain used to certain cuisines, often get a slice of their culture. From time to time, when we rotate menus, or when you make sure that you can have something that is, I don't know, friendly to someone that's diabetic, or someone that's celiac, someone that's vegetarian or halal. These things make a massive difference when you are within a confined environment and have only this choice for food. Or if you have other choices, just the ability to be able to eat with your colleagues and not have to worry that you may have an allergic reaction, things like that. So I think that is the key insight that is more prevalent in a working environment, a food service working environment, than maybe a typical high street restaurant. Same could be said in some respects for, say, like lodging, like hotels, etc., because people are in that space and want that option there. But in the workplace, where people, they need to be there to pay their bills, they need to be there to collaborate, they need to do the many things that they do in the workplace. Having some tangible, convenient options that is for everyone is a real win.
Yeah. So you talked about making the food inclusive because you have a whole bunch of people all coming together in one space. You don't know who may have what issues or dietary restrictions. How do you ensure for that?
Yeah, it's a good question because you can't please everyone. I mean, I don't think the
Yeah.
goal is to please everyone because they're just losing. If you try to please everyone in food, I always say to people, I think the one thing that is probably more political than politics is food. Whether it is nutrition, whether it is
Yeah.
a perception of health, or where my food comes from, dietary requirements, it can get real crazy real quick. So I think really it's how can we provide menu options that are balanced from a health perspective versus indulgence, but also can at least in Europe and the UK hit free from many of the top 14 allergens because those are essentially the more common allergens that people have. Then there is really the looking at the community that you're trying to serve, right? Is it where are you located geographically? How diverse is your employee pool? What are they used to from, because as much as we don't like to stereotype, we need to stereotype. We need to be able to understand the commonalities of how people eat. And there's a very prominent traditions and cultures in different parts of the world and how people deal with food. So I think it starts first with understanding your audience, and then really figuring out from there what small adjustments can be made to accommodate more people, not everyone, but more people. Some, in my experience, some ideas that we've had is around DIY stations that can supplement certain components of, say, a hotline, say a buffet hotline, so that if there is not necessarily in the your main menu an option for a specific individual, they have the ability to build their own in a way that's safe for them or a way that it respects their needs. I think sometimes there is a risk of going too far, especially where authenticity is concerned. If you're representing a certain themed menu, like a culture, like a Thai menu, a Mexican menu, Indian menu, etc., you you have the risk of adjusting or accommodating too much as well. And I think there is a fine balance there. So there is no perfect answer to how you accommodate those people. I think just making sure that you understand that the goal is not to please everyone because I don't think that's really possible. But the goal being to accommodate as many people as you can whilst remaining true and authentic to service style and the market and the menu that you're trying to portray.
Yeah. And does this hold true both for the fresh food aspect as well as, say, packaged food um, in the office, the snacks
Yeah,
and the refreshments?
I think so. I think so. I think I spoke a little bit about the cafe side, and packaged snacks and drinks is that's where really the brand identity comes into it as well. And there's a real opportunity, depending on how creative one wants to be, in introducing culturally relevant products, into a market or to an audience that maybe hasn't experienced that in a while. Maybe it's of their origin. So, that, for example, you could look at, I don't know, poke or pokero from Japan or Korea into a specific market where, say, in New York, where there's maybe a higher population of people from Korea, and then this is a memorable moment. This is like, oh wow, I haven't had these in ages, and that nostalgia is like beautiful to see in the workplace as well. It does show an element of care, and I've done that many times with different cross cultural products. And what you do find is that it inspires pride and questions from people from other demographics. And hey, I love this product from this part of the world, and it just inspires that organic and very very meaningful conversation starters, I should say, around food in various different cultures. Um, so packaged snacks and drinks, I think brand identity is one, but also there are a lot more obviously key indicators around what's in the products. Typically, the product will have all ingredients listed, maybe hallmarks that identify whether something is gluten free or free from nuts or vegan. And it's easier for people to make those choices with packaged snacks and drinks, especially where is something that someone has a very serious allergic reaction to. Um, and so, yeah, speak a lot about the allergy aspect of things. I think in the workplace, when the company is providing options, it's a very important topic around food safety, around cross contamination. Not to say it's less important in other food service environments, but these are repeat customers almost, and you have an opportunity to learn those habits and really embed them into the service.
Yeah. So, how does the office become a space for brand discovery?
Yeah, I mean, I think it always has been. To be honest, whether it be brand discovery or just like, I think that's almost how many products have been popularized, right? It's when you you're just there and something's put in front of you and you have to make a choice. You need sustenance and it's there and you just end up picking the thing that feels most familiar. But if nothing is familiar, then you read and you figure it out and then you taste something new and you're like, wow, this is nice. What is this? And then you do your research and then you become a repeat customer. I think more recently with the plethora of brands and great products that are out there, especially in the packaged snacks and drinks world, I've done a lot of kind of choice engineering and menu engineering to position products, especially from smaller businesses, into spaces of high traffic, where the discovery and the beauty around someone discovering something new is like you see it all the time, and I think it's easier in an environment where you have maybe complementary products or services. When people are paying for a product, it can be a little bit harder. People may not want to risk their whatever currency, their dollar, their pound, the euro, on things that they don't know. So you do need to have this balance of familiarity versus newness. But with trends and things changing all the time, it's important to stay innovative and let people discover new brands, let people discover new products, new tastes, new themes. So yeah, if the question is when did food service become opportunity for brands. I think it always has been. I think there's still so much to discover. It's a great space to be in, and to for brands to be in, and for brands to reach a new market. It, I will add in the case of my work, putting products in front of a workplace audience is amazing for brand awareness, not just for sales and revenue, but just for brand awareness of packaged snacks and drinks. When that customer employee does their weekly or daily or monthly shop, they see this product and now they already know if they like it, right? They become an advocate for that product, with their family when they come home from work, etc. Yeah, and in food service and in menus, we see people rotating themes all the time, trying out foods from different parts of the world, and actually them starting to become more mainstream and more accepted. A lot I've seen this in a lot of West African food and East African food as well, more recently, and other parts of East Asia. So it's nice to see that we get to keep it exciting.
Okay. I had a question that flashed in my head. Now I forgot.
I'm sure there's more. You remembered? Go on.
Um, okay, you talked about choice and menu engineering,
Yes.
and so how does that work? What is that?
Yeah. So, okay, menu engineering in the classic sense of the term is really a few things, more of the study of profitability versus popularity and how you kind of position items even on your menu to to encourage people to make specific choices. In my experience, when I relate it to more complementary food service components, I see that as how what does your plate composition look like in terms of your availability, and how do you structure your buffet line, your options to encourage people to make specific choices. Now we can optimize for health conscious choices over as opposed to the study of profitability versus popularity. Let's look at the health component and popularity and see if we can encourage people to make healthier choices. Or if you want to drive people to a specific special, I know that as creative as we want to be on the buffet line, in certain markets, I have pizza. That's it. It doesn't matter. Everyone's going for pizza. Or, but you want to make sure that at least on that day, maybe we have certain components around the cost element of your menu that doesn't counter to something else. So you have maybe too much waste in some areas and have wasted spend. If you know you're going to have something super popular on the menu on the same day. The same goes for kind of the what we call our like planogram of our shelving of the snacks and drinks that we may have on offer, and making sure that at certain, I mean, supermarkets do this at eye line level. There's specific products, etc., accessibility component of things, but also the product type and product categories and the range of products we have, and making sure that we can have a complete range so people have a specific choice. So kind of relating menu or choice engineering to the display of the full range of products so that people get the options of the still, the sparkling, the caffeine free, the sweet, the savory components of options. In the workplace, I think I personally look at choice engineering a little bit further. I look at the sizing of products, if it's more confectionery, understanding that we want people to have a smaller amount. They can take two instead of one, and being forced to have a larger gram size of a confectionery snack. We would look at areas of mentioned sizing, the ingredient list, and how many. If I can have something that is potentially vegan, that would also be vegetarian, of course, and potentially also gluten free or maybe nut free. That kills a lot of birds with that one stone. But making sure that it's not disproportionately impacting people that don't have those allergies or intolerances, and that they still feel like it's also a great product. So the choice component, there's a few things there. Not sure if hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. So you, how do you balance the nutrition aspect of it and the finance, the budget for this? Because if these are
Yeah,
complementary, then that's something you have to
yeah.
worry about.
It can be tough, and funnily enough, I think a lot of it is a few different things. There's like the perception of health first of all. There's nutrition and there's health, and I kind of I've seen things as, especially in more of the between meal area, as none of it is a bar a few ingredients, additives, etc. Nothing's really unhealthy or healthy. It's more about balance, like about quantity. It's about moderation. And so, as I alluded to before, in terms of the portion sizes, that's one way where we look to balance out cost as well, especially in the cafe areas as well. If your food service line allows for it, having that be something that is served as opposed to self-serve, in terms of your higher cost items. Negotiating, of course, with your suppliers, with your vendor partners, making sure that we can get the best price for certain components, and buy in bulk if we can, depending on the length of contracts and agreements, and all of that good stuff. Then going back to the perception of health, I think the most health conscious of us would say that the whole food components are the most healthy. So making sure that there is access to these things, so people that want to make more conscious choices can. It's very easy to slip into the world of processed food and items that you can just kind of throw out and get out easily. There is a lot of products in food service now that are better for you, that food service providers can adopt and include in their menus. I think there's many ways that you can balance out nutrition, health, and cost. Waste mitigation, sourcing sustainably. Um, I mean, some people would say, sometimes you go down a certain route of sustainable products and local sourcing, and it can get more expensive. But I think with more intentional efforts, you can find that it can cost a lot less, depending on where you are in the world and who you partner with. But a lot of all of this can really depend on your operation as a whole, your service style. So yeah.
And how involved do the employees get in your experience in terms of, hey, I want this product or I want that product?
So food is a very emotional topic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Everyone, everyone has something to say about food. Um, Everyone has a relationship with food, whether it be your grandma used to make this thing this way, or you went to this restaurant and had this, or this is what you had growing up. This is what you had to, you know, for this public holiday. So everyone has a relationship. So everyone feels like they have a right and to be involved in the decision making process of what should be on a menu. And I think to some extent it is true. People they are the people that are eating, the people that are being served. So feedback really should is a gift and should really be given. Constructive feedback. And in my experience, feedback has really helped us create programs. A lot of the work that I've done across the Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia, um, I've really approached it from a perspective of I am not the expert here. I understand the program and how to deliver a program, but from a cultural perspective, I am not the one who knows best. So really seeking out that feedback has helped me make many minor adjustments in our program that has paid off tenfold in terms of the experience that those customers and employees have had. So yeah, I'll say feedback is important. One system I had set up in some of my previous work had been allowing, this is with the packaged snacks and drinks area of my business, and allowing for a series of companies to set up in our office and almost creating an expo style event and encouraging employees to go around and try products and create a voting mechanism internally for employees to upvote what they wanted us to stock, what they wanted us to list, and that empowered employees to feel they had a sense of ownership in terms of, hey, we actually chose what this company is providing for us, and also allowing for some businesses that provide very innovative and unique products to get in the door, have access to some of the bigger food service retailers and environments for stocking. So yeah, I mean, the sum of it is that I think feedback is important around food. It has to be taken with a pinch of salt. It's all subjective. So yeah.
um, do you have any examples of brands that did that kind of may have used your platform as a jumping off point and then became really popular?
Yeah. There is a few, and first of all, I'll say I can never fully take credit for building a brand. I know there's so much that goes into building a product brand, and being one of probably and hopefully many companies that would have listed that product. I don't want to do them any disjustice in terms of that. But yeah, there's been a few. There's a brand that springs to mind called Revived here in the UK. A small company owned by I think a father and son duo that we had listed, we discovered, and they every time I've bumped into this the son of the founding duo, it's always mentioned to me that how the times when we listed them was probably their highest grossing revenue month in terms of the scale and the amount of products that we bought, which was just amazing to hear. Then there was and there's another brand called Cookie who have great circularity ecosystem around reusing waste, etc. Cool. All right, so I'll start from there. So there's another brand called Cookie that have a really good circularity component around reusing waste from their product. They're a freeze dried fruit and dried fruit company. They have a roots. I think they source in. I don't want to get this wrong. I think Vietnam. But they have a full range of products or or fruit that represent a lot of the Southeast Asian market. So they trade here in the UK and some other areas. But yeah, so this brand I met about a year or so ago, and we were able to list them. I was very impressed with their their product, and they've just gone on to do so many amazing things. And I think the brand awareness has really helped catapult them as a company. I've been very privileged to be able to put a lot of companies or smaller companies on from that perspective. I think that is the fulfilling, the very fulfilling part of what I've been able to do, especially in my previous role.
And okay, I'm gonna ask a couple of. I know we didn't really. I know
No,
you kind
no,
of mentioned that a
ask
couple of
away, ask
things.
away.
Okay, I'm really curious about some of the trends that you've seen within how employees consume food versus how we consume food in general. Um, is there an overlap? Is it slightly different because it tends to be a bit more of a closed environment?
Yeah.
Is there a difference?
Um, I think, I think yes. I think that it can depend on if food is supplemented or at full price or
Mm,
free.
okay.
We have this tendency to just this tendency to overindulge when things are complementary, and it does
Hmm.
take a while for our minds to really understand that actually this is going to be here tomorrow and the next day. And what I do observe is that, especially, and this happens when high street restaurants, when people go to a buffet for the first time, right? They're really trying to squeeze out as much as they can for their money, and you just put more on your plate. And I do see that pattern in food service, and on the complementary side. So that's one difference, but also similar to some aspects of high street restaurants. The supplementary side, I think, is interesting because people are paying something, but then they have this have this impression of what the quality should be like, and it almost feels like there's this expectation that it has to hit a certain quality mark, but but it's subsidized. So depending on what is going on behind the scenes in terms of the deal that's been struck, and how the vendor partners are sourcing products, it can miss the mark at times, and people can be left feeling disgruntled. But I think really a lot of these components have really been there first and foremost for convenience, and I think people get lost in the detail of, I want this type of food, this type of cuisine, I need this type of drink, etc. When first and foremost it's about them having access to sustenance, a balanced meal option through their working day. So I think the core difference is the meals provided in the workplace needs to empower productivity, needs to be convenient, needs to needs to not be too distracting, but also of good quality. You have a chance to make magic and make moments with the food in the workplace, but also, unlike high street restaurants, that's not the core objective.
Yes. Mm, yes.
Yeah.
Um, and how does our current work situation change the food situation? So, I mean, like we have now gone from from the full time be at the office pre COVID to
Hmm.
now people just work in so many different ways. They're either remote or hybrid. They come in for a few days.
Yeah.
And everybody comes in on different days. How complicated has that made your job?
Oh, it's a lot more complicated. Firstly, I will say that those offices or the spaces that have been able to maintain food service in the corporate work is a big driving factor for people for in office time,
Mm,
right? The convenience part matters even more because part of being at home is very convenient to open your fridge and get food. It's not as convenient to cook it because because you know not, we don't have personal chefs at home, right? And well, most of us at least, I guess. But in the office, there is a team. There's a there is options there. So it is a big driver for getting people into the office. I would say that, at least in my experience, having that consistency in expected traffic really helps with managing food output, waste management, how much should be cooked, even just shift management in terms of staff. Um, what has been I guess a saving grace to some extent is that it feels like society has gravitated to specific days of the week for working, or at least in certain industries, which does help with some consistency. A lot of companies have specific tools that can monitor trends in terms of in office time, in terms of badging data, in terms of when people are coming in and how many people. And so we always have worked off reactive data and forecasts. And I think that just got a little bit more tricky. Although we've been kind of in this mode of working for a little while now, a lot of companies have had to look at how they right size their operation. Is this still working, right? Is this worth the investment, or is the service style does the service style need to be adjusted? And in fairness, a lot of companies have scaled down, and I think it's really important that that companies look at their operation and see that there's still so much value in it, but understand that there may be some adjustments needed to make sure they're making the most out of the investment they're making in and operating a food service program in their office.
Right. And I mean, world's in a very high food inflation time, and
Mhm.
so that adds another layer of complexity to the issue of having like fresh food and packaged food in the company at subsidized rates. At some
Yeah.
point, do you expect those to go away? Or as you mentioned, some of it is going to be sized down.
Well, I think I started off speaking more around the inclusive aspect of things,
Hmm.
right? And depending on your menu format, your options in the office, that can come at an additional cost. And although that for me feels like quite an important aspect, it's not, like I said before, the intention of the service. It's about convenience first. So providing sustenance to the majority, providing an option is still I think very much needed and very much important and the priority. And I think that you can still have both depending on what's necessary for a business. And I think that's the core of it. If it's not necessary, but I believe if it was there, it was probably necessary, or at least filling some void. It's still very much important. Some companies are changing their strategies, and it may not be as important now as it used to be, and that's also totally fine. But I think if a company does choose to maintain these, understanding that they're not kind of two parts, snacks and drinks and meals, that is one service, and understanding that if someone is in the workplace for a certain period of time, what level of refreshments and food is the company providing? I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. There's just a company dynamic and what they choose to do. Some companies just do lunch. Some companies just do snacks and drinks. Some companies do 3 meals a day and snacks and drinks, and it's very much up to the company. I mean, some companies just partner with a delivery based platform and allow for Friday mixes, and it really depends. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It's really about company culture and how that company feels they'll benefit from this sort of perk.
Yeah. Okay. So, what advice would you give a brand that is trying to get into um, a company, like they're trying to break into office spaces? Like, what
Yeah,
do you have any advice that you would give them about how to do it? What kind
yeah.
of products to do it with?
I mean, it's a loaded question because, like, so I cover multiple markets, and I really see some key differences in different markets. Being based here in the UK, the UK market is quite saturated in many different product categories. You're really competing against a lot of products that look and taste good, and so it's not good enough to just have a good product. Access to people is important. Getting your product pitch ready. I think one pages usually are very helpful when people send me one pages, rather than like pages and pages of documents. I'm not going to read through that. But even once I do get that and the product is good, there could be a long list of products that I would love to stock also that are in that same product category. I think really looking at what's out there and in a specific market and saying where are the gaps, right? Because as I mentioned before, the inclusive component of the menu is pretty important in the office environment, and in many environments. You think of airlines, you think of hospitals, you think of you know many of these environments, and I think that if you can create something that fills that void, if that void isn't already being filled, and at a price that is competitive enough, a lot of companies will pay attention. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, and there are markets that are more saturated than others. I think trade and tariffs are going to play a big part in kind of what's available where. A lot of brands and products will be changing their recipes. Will maybe can reconsider what markets they're in. So that will have an impact on availability. So maybe some markets that were previously saturated, maybe specific companies from certain other international markets had really dived into further afield. There may be some movement happening that may present some opportunities. So yeah, there's a few things there, but I think that just keep going. It's tough. There's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be, and I think a lot of brands know that. But I do think food service is an amazing place to be. Supermarket retail is great, but there are limits there, and there's kind of a lot of costs, a lot of upfront costs to kind of gain access there, depending on the food service provider and model. It can be just as, or if not more, lucrative than some of the traditional retail.
Okay. Huh.
It's in a very interesting time, right? And
Yeah.
right now, in a lot of the office environment, it is about efficiencies. It is about how we can, what are the actual needs to service these offices. And I think sometimes the food component, it's not as tangible in terms of measuring the impact because it is employee culture. It is the essence of the office environment, and it is the other things around convenience and productivity, etc. But I would caution if someone has if a company has a specific service like this, that they wouldn't immediately run and just cut it because it is the most visible and most engaged perk and benefit most likely in their workplace, and it will have an immediate and direct impact on how employees feel and how employees move around the office space. Not to say it's not the right thing to do, depending on the company, but just caution the impact is probably often understated in terms of what it can have in terms of just minor changes, good and bad. So yeah, so, yeah. I mean, I can cite one or two working internationally, one or two things that had learnings I've had, right? As someone that has managed many international locations, but not always approached it as the student, right? As the one learning. And, I remember when I was building out a kitchen, a micro kitchen, like a snack section for a Hong Kong office. And I visited first, and I'd seen that in the current kitchen, a lot of people had taken out all the beverages and put them on the island counter in the middle of the kitchen, and they were just kind of there. And then I asked someone like, why does this keep happening? Why are people doing that? They're meant to be in the fridges. They mentioned that there is this perception in Hong Kong and some other areas part of that part of Asia that cold beverages are bad for you or just kind of bad for your body. So what they do is they keep it out and they let it cool to room temperature before drinking it. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just interested in insights. And so, when we were building out the other kitchen, we just built simple things like building out open shelving around the fridges to intentionally stock room temperature beverages. And I think often we overlook simple things like that that actually make all the difference to how a community may interact with a service, especially when a lot of a lot of companies, especially franchises, may copy and paste their design models into different markets. Similar things can be said around. We had an espresso machine, manual espresso machine model in my last job in different offices as a global standard. A nice thing for people to engage with. And when it came to our Mumbai office, I decided actually, do you know what? Let's put a chai machine there. I think machine Chai Point or something like that that does tea, coffee, and chai. And instead, and it was a massive hit because obviously chai is a very prevalent hot drink option in India. Still, coffee culture is growing very rapidly in India as well. So there are just small nuggets of things by listening to people and getting feedback. That is in the feedback point that I mentioned earlier. That really just allows someone that is centrally managing a global program to make some informed decisions about cultures that are not native to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I think we just kind of scratched the surface. There is so
yeah,
much more, but
yeah.
I think there's only so much time that we have as
There's
well.
only so much time. We know we could go on for ages, but I mean,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the
Oh,
opportunity to kind of just speak and have a great conversation.
oh
Um,
no. Thank you for doing this.
my pleasure, really. I think
So please.